Hello and welcome to Riverbed SteelFusion know-how video, where we learn how to configure SteelFusion and AWS storage gateway and accomplish a consolidated branch infrastructure that is easy to centrally manage and control. My name is Anshuk Kesarwani and I work with Riverbed Technical Support. Before jumping into demo and start configuring the devices, let's look at the solution overview first. SteelFusion, when used in conjunction with AWS Storage Gateway and AWS Cloud Storage, delivers unparalleled data availability, flexibility, and protection for branch infrastructure, while simultaneously reducing data center storage requirements and improving data availability and recoverability by leveraging cheap elastic cloud storage delivered via Amazon Cloud Storage Services. By using the AWS Storage Gateway with SteelFusion, businesses can begin the transition to a storage-less data center where all storage is served by the cloud on demand through SteelFusion to applications and users sitting at the branch locations. Branch offices with constrained network links can enjoy the same cloud storage benefits that the data center enjoys otherwise through the use of the SteelFusion. If you want to know more details, you can also refer to our solution guide, which is available on the splash page. I would make the link available in the description below this YouTube video. AWS Storage is a service connecting an on-premises virtual machine with cloud-based storage to provide integration between an organization's on-premise IT environment and AWS storage infrastructure. The service allows you to securely store data in the AWS cloud for scalable and cost-effective storage. When we talk about AWS Storage Gateway, so it supports industry standard storage protocols, which is both block level and file access that can work with your existing applications. So as on date, the storage gateway delivers two configurations which is compatible with the SteelFusion solution and which are related with the volume gateway. We still do not have support with the file mode storage gateway. So the two types of supported configurations are gateway cached volumes, where you can store your primary data in the Amazon S3 and you have a working copy of the data locally on your storage gateway virtual machine, which is shown below. There is another configuration which is gateway stored volumes. So this gateway stored volumes are used in the event you need low latency access to your entire data set. You can configure your on-premise gateway to store your primary data locally and asynchronously backing up point-in-time snapshots of this data to Amazon S3, which is as shown below. So essentially in this type of configuration, your entire data set sits in your data center itself. Only the snapshots of this data is stored in the Amazon S3. For our demo, we would be using the previous setup, which is gateway cached volumes. So this is a typical SteelFusion solution with AWS Cloud Storage Gateway and Amazon Cloud Storage looks like. Here in the picture, we can see that we have an Amazon Cloud Storage Gateway virtual machine installed in the data center, which interacts with the backend Amazon Cloud Services and keeps the data to and fro to Amazon S3. Our SteelFusion core connects with this storage gateway to present these LANs to various branch locations. Let's look at some deployment prerequisites. So these prerequisites involve having an Amazon Web Services Cloud Gateway licensed and configured in either gateway cached mode or gateway stored mode. You should also need to be having administrator access to the Amazon Web Services Storage Gateway and SteelFusion appliances to make changes such as enabling ESXi, adding initiator groups, etc. You should also require SteelFusion Core and SteelFusion Edge appliances installed and powered up. Let's look at AWS Storage Gateway deployment steps. So the first step is from the Amazon Web Services Storage Gateway page. We need to download and install an AWS Storage Gateway virtual machine and then install in either a gateway cached or gateway stored configuration. You can also refer to the below page where it gives more details on how to download and configure these devices. Once the VM is installed, you will need to size and configure local storage volumes for the AWS Storage Gateway to use. You remember in the previous slide, we require some local storage for keeping the cache data as well as a bucket which would be used for syncing the data to the cloud. So the next step would be to activate the AWS Storage Gateway. And then we can configure the storage in Amazon S3 for the AWS storage gateway. If you are using a gateway cached configuration, specify the volume size you want to use to create. If using a gateway stored volume, you need to specify the local storage in the VM you created previously that will be assigned for use. So once your AWS storage gateway is up and running, connected to the cloud, so we need to complete the steps on our SteelFusion side. So what are the steps there? So you need to add the ESXi portal on the SteelFusion core and enter details of the on-premise storage gateway device. Once the portal is successfully added, the SteelFusion core would auto-discover and add all the MPIO portals if available and would add the targets. Then you can add the LUNs as normal and complete the remaining steps of presenting this LUN to the edge as any of the other ESXi configurations set up as normal. Enough of the theory, let's jump into a quick demo and start deploying an AWS storage gateway and then connect this using the SteelFusion and present the storage to the branch locations. So the first step for deploying an AWS storage gateway is to log in on your AWS console. So here I am logged on to my AWS console. So your storage gateway is in this section. So just click on storage gateway. Okay. Let's click on get started. So there are two types of configuration. One is the file gateway, which is still not supported with SteelFusion. And the other option is the volume gateway. Okay. We'll select the volume gateway for this demo and we'll be using cached volumes. You can also use stored volumes, but for the sake of this demo, I'm using the cached volumes, where on the on-prem appliance, we would only be having a cache and the rest of the data is stored on your AWS storage. Click next. Then it will give you an option to download the OVA image, which you can deploy on your ESXi sitting in your data center. Okay. For the sake of this demo, I have already downloaded this image and stored on my laptop. So then you need to log into your ESXi where you want this on-prem AWS storage gateway virtual machine to be installed. Go to File, Deploy OVF Template. Specify the path where your OVA file is stored. In my case, it is stored here. Okay, give it a meaningful name. Specify the data store where you want this VM to be installed on this ESXi. Okay, it's asking me to configure the network mapping. In my case, I need to use this. Now we can see that my VM is getting deployed onto this ESXi. It normally takes a couple of minutes to deploy. So I'll pause the video here, and once this VM is deployed, I'll resume the video. Okay, we can see that my VM is successfully deployed. Let's close this. There are some additional configurations that we still need to do on this virtual machine before we power this on. We go to this virtual machine and do edit settings. So the first requirement was to add two hard disks, one which will be used for storing the local cache data. Along with that, we also need to add a hard disk which will be used as a bucket where the data would be in sync with the cloud. Okay. Because that's just a demo, so what I would be doing is I would be adding two 5 gig hard disks into my virtual machine. We add another one. Depending on the usage, you probably need to provision much higher capacity, but this is just a demo, so I would be only using this 5 gig capacity hard disk. AWS highly recommends to change your SCSI controller from LSI Logic Parallel to Para Virtual. So you just change this to VMware Para Virtual. Okay, and complete the configuration. Okay, now we can go ahead and power on the virtual machine. So if your network is set up to give DHCP, so you don't need to do any configuration here. So in my case, it has detected that it has got IP address of 1072.192.73. Let me check if this IP is reachable in the network. 1072.192.73. Okay, so I can see that this IP is up and reachable in my network. So my VM is up and reachable in the network. Let me go back to my AWS console, hit next. I need to specify the IP address of my gateway. Once I hit next, it would detect my AWS storage gateway. It would ask me to provide my gateway time zone. So my gateway is installed in Singapore. So we'll select this. We can provide a meaningful name for my gateway and then activate the gateway. So it says gateway is now active and it's preparing local disk. Let's wait for a minute or two. Okay, so it has detected the 2 hard disks that I have added. If you remember from the previous slides, we need to specify which disk I would be using for my local cache and which disk I would be using for the upload buffer, which would be coordinating with the backend storage. So it's giving me a warning that my recommended minimum disk capacity is not met. So probably in your production environment, you should be using a disk capacity which is of much higher. Okay, this is just for demo, so I would be clicking save and continue. Okay, so if you can see, my AWS storage gateway is successfully created. Let me go ahead and create volume. When you create volume, you need to specify the capacity and also ESXi target name. Okay, so I'm giving AWS test gateway as my ESXi target and the capacity is 10 gig. So it's asking you whether or not you want to configure CHAP authentication. For this demo, I'm just doing skip. Let me go ahead and add one more volume. Okay, I've created 2 volumes. If I go to this volumes, I can see that the 2 volumes are successfully created. Okay, let me now log into my SteelFusion core, and this is the edge that I would be presenting these volumes to. Okay, how do we add the storage gateway to the SteelFusion core? I go to configure, ESXi initiators MPIO, add an ESXi portal. I need to provide the IP address of my storage gateway. Add ESXi portal. Perfect. Okay, so you can see my SteelFusion core is now connected to my storage gateway. I go to configure, LANs, then I can do add LAN. Okay, so these are the 2 10 gigs volumes that we created on the storage gateway. Let's activate this one by one. So we can specify our LAN alias, OS LAN AWS. Okay, I go ahead and add this. So this is the second 10 gig LAN. So assuming that I would be using this or my data LAN coming in from AWS. Okay, so we can see that these 2 LANs are now added to my SteelFusion core, but it says it is unmapped. So we use the same. We first map these to the edge. Okay, add the other one also to the edge mapping. Okay, so my LANs are mapped, but they are inaccessible. So we need to do the same as we have done for any other ESXi one. We go to SteelFusion edges, expand the edge, go to LANs. Okay, so we need to give access to this LAN. We go to edit, and right now what I'm doing is I'm allowing access to all. Similarly, we do the same for the OS one also. Add on. Okay, so the configuration is done on the core. So if we log into the edge now, we should see these 2 LANs being presented to this edge, and those storage is coming all the way from AWS storage. Okay, we log into the edge, we go to storage edge configuration. So if I go to LANs now, see this data LAN AWS, which is a 10 gig LAN, and this OS LAN AWS, which is again a 10 gig LAN. We can also go ahead and present these LANs to the ESXi. Let's do that and check whether the ESXi can see these LANs or not. For that, we log into the ESXi server. So this is the ESXi server at the branch location. So if I go to storage adapters, you can see that now I detect two 10 gig volumes. If I go to storage, add storage, see, so it has detected the two 10 gig volumes, which is now presented to this ESXi server because we have done all the prerequisite settings. Go ahead and format this using VMFS. Similarly, we can add the second 10 gig LAN. Okay. See. So you're able to browse the data store, and the beauty of this solution is this storage is coming all the way from your AWS storage, and we have presented it to a branch location, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible if we were not using SteelFusion as a solution. This concludes the demo where we learn how to configure and install an AWS storage gateway and use it with the SteelFusion solution to present the cloud storage to the branch locations. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon in some other SteelFusion know-how video. If you like the video, please subscribe to our channel and give a thumbs up to this video. Thank you.